Hello everyone watching and welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to be going over the second system for electing your representatives. In our first video, we looked at first past the post and how that would impact an election where there was under 50% of the vote for one candidate. And today, we're going to be going over runoff elections where, once again, something happens if you don't get over 50%. Now, in runoff elections, using this map once again, we see the Liberal Party is winning, with the National Conservatives in second, the Conservatives, Social Democrats, and others further behind. Now, under a first-past-the-post system, the Liberal candidate would just win immediately, just like that. They won a plurality, or more than everyone else, of the vote, and therefore they'd be elected. However, in runoff elections, this is not the case. Runoff elections are very good when there are two major wings. In other words, there is a right wing that is mostly going to unify around a right-wing candidate, and a left wing. Now, this doesn't always work out, so first we're going to look at where it works and when it doesn't. So, let's start with when it works. One area where it works is in the United States, where there is a very entrenched two-party system. The runoff elections are usually used when one party will win like 49% of the vote, the other will win 47% of the vote, and the remaining 4% of the vote will go to independent candidates. However, in this mock election, there are way more candidates. There are 8 major candidates. And 8 candidates in this type of election, in a runoff election, is not very representative. This is because in this election, which very, very closely mirrors the French elections that just happened recently, would lead to a Liberal versus National Conservative runoff. In runoff elections, after the first round, the top 2 candidates go to the second round, where there is a new election campaign and another vote to determine the final winner. Assuming that every single candidate endorses another candidate who is as close to them as possible, you are going to be looking at a scenario where Democratic Socialists, Social Democrats, the Greens, the Libertarians all vote for the Liberal candidate, with moderate conservatives splitting their votes, while the conservatives would probably vote for the National Conservative candidate. However, this would lead to a massive landslide for the Liberal candidate. But it's not exactly representative of the country, as the Liberals, of course, do not have a massive victory overall. They don't have the majority of the vote. They only have a quarter. Additionally, another issue, which is becoming ever clearer in France especially, is what happens if you have more than 2 distinct wings. For example, maybe the Democratic Socialists know they won't win, but they're fine supporting a Social Democratic candidate. But if the Liberal candidate goes against the National Conservative candidate, now the Democratic Socialists are voting for the lesser of 2 evils, not for who they want to win, but rather for the candidate they need to beat, the one they want to lose, the least bad option. Runoff elections can be very, very competitive in times when maybe you have a Social Democrat and a Conservative win, and people both further left and further right, and also in the middle, have to choose who they're voting for. And for a long time, that's been how it is in the United States, and how it used to be in France and other countries that used the runoff system. But as we continue to head, especially in parts of the Western Europe, we see that runoff elections don't exactly work as they're intended. Because it's possible to have, as happened in France previously, decades ago, we had a conservative or maybe moderate conservative candidate go into a runoff versus a national conservative one. And that really doesn't work. This doesn't work because now you have Democratic Socialists who might say that they hate the conservatives of both sides so much that they'd rather not vote for a conservative at all. And that means not voting in this case. So, runoffs can be good, and they can ensure that whoever wins will be the preferred candidate of at least 50% of people, but only against their opposing candidate. In this election, obviously the Liberals would win, but what happens if you take out the Liberal Party? Maybe the Liberal Party gives 5% of their votes to the Greens, 5% to the Libertarians, 5% to the moderate conservatives, and so on. Or, better yet, what happens if, or worse yet, I guess, you have 3 different candidates all achieving around 25% of the vote? Who wins then? Now you have a whole third of the country, essentially, that is just completely wiped out. Their vote in the first round didn't matter, even though there were almost as many votes as some of the other candidates. So the runoff system poses a lot of challenges in terms of how do you get to the runoff, and also in terms of coalition vote. But it does make it easier for candidates who are further left or further right, as well as from smaller parties, to run in the first round without a fear of complete collapse. In Australia, for example, voters who were generally left-wing were able to vote for the Greens in the first round and then vote for Labour in the second round to defeat more right-wing candidates. And this meant that they were still able to say that Labour wasn't their first choice, but also ensure that there was a left-wing government. However, in France, smaller parties took just enough of the vote away, smaller left-wing parties, that is, from the main left-wing frontrunner Jean-Luc Mélenchon, that Mélenchon was unable to make it to the second round, where Macron eventually annihilated Le Pen with around 55% of the vote. So yeah, what do you think about the runoff elections? Don't forget to leave comments, like, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.